Transformation of Fascism with weapons Fascism has not only rise with fear. Debts have gained strength with the words it gives to fix business opportunities and everything of the state. When people think about fascism, the hordes walking in their minds, waving flags and echoes of large crowds, are alive. However, there was no real military power behind these images. Dictators were not only controlling people with weapons, but also their salary. Today, we will see how weapons are transformed. But before proceeding to your location, remember to subscribe to our channel, like our video and jump like. Welcome to the Data Finance. Here the money, power, and history are roofed. And it's not so simple, as nothing looks. This is a fact that fascist leaders discovered that the easiest way to obey is terror, not economic dependence. On behalf of security, many generations have sold their freedoms in a desperate way of salary. The stage was founded with disaster. In 1920s, Europe was intent. The costs of the Great War had created, a large space with the industrials and corrupted currencies. Hyperinflation in Germany became a problem that affects every part of the society. The returning soldiers in Italy do not find work. There were no retirement facilities and the meaning of life. Democracies were young, fragile, and weak. Then he left the crisis in 1929, an accident that provides the end of the war. The unemployment rate in Europe has passed 30%. Farmers have become able to, no longer meet coal burning. People in Berlin sell furniture for food. In Rome, families were waiting for bread queues in large areas built on time of emperors. And a new politician appeared in this chaos environment. Hope was not a promising freedom, but it was offering layout. Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco have risen because they are in search of stability, not because they want the public's dictators. Each individual received the same offer: political freedom in exchange of economic security. They noticed that democracy did not do ideology, becomes a new currency when money fails. Hitler was above the knees in Germany when it came to power in 1933. 6 million jobs. Industry production dropped half. Foreign investors abandoned the country. However, only 3 years in unemployment almost dropped to zero. German miracle started. From the outside world, it looked like a DIHA product. For people, this created a feeling of salvation. Nazi regime affected people by offering affordable cars such as new business facilities, highways, factories, stadiums, and Volkswagen. Radio was defined as a rebirth, but behind this illusion, an economic trap that changed history was hidden. I couldn't find the money, they invented it. Through hidden ties called Mio bills, they have made loans from books into industrial contracts. The state printed banks to accept such stocks as a payment tool, and they hope that these stocks will be saved in the future. When Germany becomes a strong country, it was like an economic magic. Accordingly, unpaid, full employment was provided. However, this was the result of a prediction that does not require a real calculation. The living standard of workers started to rise. Numbers, at least on paper, were phenomenal. But this salvation was expected with militarization, not from efficiency. Every new business was dependent on battle directly or indirectly. Military transportation routes doubled. The factories engaged in Volkswagen production were able to manufacture tanks in several weeks. Business Miracle was a propaganda program that increases only national pride. The DIHA of the system was carrying a psychological dimension. People did not feel crushed. In contrast, they feel they were used. They paid a fee for their loyalty. When payment control belongs to the state, freedom is becoming negotiated. If you watch here, you will love our video. Then click the liking button to show it to the whole world. In the Alps, Mussolini was playing a similar game. In Italy, the Duc said not only work but unity. Among the many years of strikes and class conflicts, Mussolini revealed a claim that it will collaborate in accordance with the national interests of workers and employers by offering a third way between socialism and capitalism. This situation, that looks balanced on paper, was kept under control in practice. Regime changed free unions with state-supported unions. Fees and prices were organized. Private companies were technically private, but only as long as they obey. Every sector had to report to Fidesz party. Every contract was passing through bureaucrats. Propaganda introduced efficiency as a virtue. Mussolini allowed trains to move on time. People have become a common stereotype that says fascism works, but the figures were telling another story. Inefficiency downtime was experienced. Imports exploded. Debt balloon occurred. The public programs of Mussolini were much more expensive than building circuses, building monuments, and creating business. The regime, to maintain the illusion of success, constantly borrowed from external creditors. The miracle of Italy was built to image rather than a real growth. As a company, for investors, the fascist state has grown up to no longer be stored. Franco in Spain watched this situation and took lessons. After a bloody inner battle, the new regime was offering him insufficient promises. Spain started to implement an economic autarky by proclaiming "no one can trust." This idea was brought to the word with a preaching voice tone. Spain tried to protect national industries, isolated from trade itself, and everything was reduced to food and fuel. The state of the art businesses have become the key element of maintaining their assets. To get a job, you need loyalty. To get credit or to have a host, there is no importance of qualities. Black market became the only real market. Efficiency fell and showed hunger. However, Franco remained in management for about 4 years. Even if the economy fails, the loyalty mechanism continued its functionality. People agreed, with determination, to obey. Regime managed to keep itself under strict control. Although different ideologies are available in different countries, all have a common formula: debt, jobs, propaganda, and control. Fascist regimes did not only build economies, they also retrained their citizens. They created a society in the forefront of loyalty. Production was praised, but unemployment increased. Economic dependence has become a soft weapon of dictatorship. When it comes to the late 1930s, economic illusion reached its peak. Injustice almost zero, production explosion made, and national pride was recovered. Fascism on the surface seemed to be a solution against the chaos of capitalism, but in reality this was an illusion. The market did not appear. The state changed its place with the iron tube. Every factory has become part of a single center, equation of farm and fee package. It symbolizes stability. This was the true intelligence of fascist economy, not efficiency, control. Dictators learned that the power of fear can only be kept in possession time, 400s, true for a limited time, but the addiction can last forever. The government does not require dependent workers, gives votes to stay alive or stops greeting. The functioning of the system was quite simple. First of all, things came to the forefront. No dictatorship cannot show being as ideologically for a long time. Therefore, regimes have undertaken a moral responsibility. The study brought freedom. Nazi propaganda shaped work faithfully. The second element was borrowed: public military expansion, and well known with subsidies. However, this money was not real or borrowed or hidden from the rest of the creative accounting. The third element was propaganda. Economic policies, pride, and fate. The state hadn't bought your silence, they had obtained your beliefs. Citizens were perceived as part of a large national project, not only as workers. The size was rebuilt, and this was the element that makes control invisible. When you think you build the future, you don't feel your chains in your hands. Nazi economic miracle is often referred to as a history of success, but this is not true. Yes, unemployment fell, but the salary decreased, prices rise, and the negotiating power of workers disappeared. Independent unions were closed. Strikes were counted, real income fell, but the propaganda people believed to be rich. The work was government supported, parades, cheap radios, and holidays. It was a tool like entertainment, anesthesia. Mussolini has a similar pattern in Italy. Regime claimed that it has a combined business and capital structure under a preaching flag. In fact, the competition with genes took place and the harmony was determined by the choice. Each worker was part of a company's salary. Time and tasks were determined. Above, no market. The company of the state turned him. When the battle time comes, submissive machines began to work at extreme speed. There was no need to convince workers to produce weapons. They were already conditioned to see production as virtue. How to build an army before fighting. Converting all economy into a long assembly line. But there is a more annoying aspect of the story. Because the control economy ended in 1945, unlike evolution, modern governments learned the same coursey stability can be achieved with work, and can be borrowed for a long time without force. Methods changed, but the principle remained constant. As unemployment increases, the solution is always the same: mass public spending, infrastructure projects, incentive packages, and preaching branding. Message familiar. Working is honored. Local purchases. Support elusu. No need dictator. Only the financial comfort of the system is available. Checking a salary every time. Nowadays, the relationship between governments and citizens seems to be less partnership and more salary record. The same dependency as engineering, with propaganda as in previous periods. Now it is built with debt, subsidization, and credit. When connected to hypothec interest, rates, savings are shaped according to inflation, and your income is becoming dependent on entertainment industries by the state. How much free you are really. No need for censorship when compliance is profitable. The governments all over the world discover the time 400 numbers, char old economic control tools in a new packaging. When factories are slowed down, the state comes into action with recovery packages. When growth is achieved, the central banks separate the budget to finance business and subsidies citizens, because stability gives a good feeling. But just as in 1930s, this wealth does not create, it only provides recycled debt. Now things have become an extension of politics, not our expression of freedom. We express completely differently. Now many sectors continue their presence due to political interests rather than competition. The areas such as defense, energy, surveillance, and infrastructure constitute an example. With the government's employer role, investor and regulatory elements stop the economic structure as a system. This creates a hierarchical structure. But hierarchies do not value freedoms, they require obedience. This is a danger that the fascist regimes time 400 and eggs should not forget about a real and modern systems that understand. If you check the sources of late, you don't need to check the conversation too. There is no need for people to revolutionize. The economic courses of philosophism are not only a historical topic related to human behavior. People don't like them because they don't like them. Safety is covered. Economies are ready to conquer everything for the stability of people, their savings, rights, and sounds. That's why Fascism won't work. Ideology is not sold insurance and premium freedom. The same emotional mechanism still nourishes the largest economy in today. The governments promise protection from fluctuations. Markets are waiting for salvation in every crisis. Citizens want to work instead of requesting reform. When increasing the debt, efficiency falls and well-being, everyone continues as long as he believes. This belief is a bond that does not appear in combination with the modern world. What is gold? What oil? Nor do they depend on. The belief that the system will stand up is that the state will continue to print, and one will still hold in the control hand. However, the date shows when this faith is broken. Limits between policy and propaganda are uncertain. The numbers leave the reality without reflecting, and one day bills have to pay as in 1939. Fascism not strongly started with budgets. The government started with the promise that he could end the chaos through business and loans. And once he managed it, trains worked, factories have been operating, flags were waved, but when money is exhausted, new demands that are lending have appeared. Land, business power, international. The final stage of the economic structure of Fascism was not stability expansion. When there is nothing to be borrowed, regimes began to be borrowed. Economic control turned into a global battle. The warning is simple but never loses its validity when the security promise becomes a permanent policy. Freedom falls into a temporary situation. Every empire who buys commitment to work will eventually have to pay with blood, forgetting the methods of philosopherism. It is alarming that every democracy is funded by debt and salaries. Control, economical control, is not always under a uniform. Sometimes wearing a suit, smiling, and hopeful growth promises and offers you a job. However, when you notice what is obtained with the price, the freedom you trade is lost very much. If this text gives you a new perspective, subscribe. Offers, date, and solutions. Thank you for your watch. If you still haven't subscribed to our channel, you can subscribe with the subscriber button at the bottom.